Everyone, hi. Welcome to our talk. As it was last week, it's going to be an open Q&A, but I'm just going to start and speak for a few minutes about Shabbos tables and Yom Tov tables. I know it's always an issue of great enjoyment and some level of stress there. So I would like to talk about that in the onset. And then we'll open up to your questions. You can ask questions on Shabbos tables. You can ask questions on anything else, things we spoke about last week, things we didn't. I designed this to be just an open, safe space where hopefully you can get some information about parenting and find it helpful and meaningful. So just some general thoughts. On the positive end, Shabbos and Yom Tov meals are a time for our family to get together. It's really becomes hardwired into the children's memory bank. It's just such an important time. And I'm just going to encourage you as parents, just a few pointers in terms of, the length of your Shabbos meals. What your house rules are as far as the children's participation, how you work things with your guests, and with the idea, with the hope of really creating an enjoyable environment. And the first thing I'm going to start with is just know your kids, and to just be realistic, and have a look at your DNA, your spouse's DNA, and which of the children got what. Baruch Hashem, I have a very restless personality. I tried to do a few good things with that energy when I got older, but, sitting in school was never a lot of fun. And my brother, Yehuda, could sit for 5 hours, and his disposition, he's just such a wonderful human being and a tzaddik. It's supposed to have him for a brother. But the two of us were sitting at the same Shabbos table. So the first thing is just to really understand your situation. Are the kids coming off a relaxing week? Are they coming off a finals week or a difficult week? Like I said, how's their tolerance for sitting long periods of time? Do you have guests at home that you'll be talking to and engaging with? And how will that relate to the children's time? So all of these things are factors. I think the most important thing is that it should be a time that the children look forward to enjoying with their family. There usually isn't more than one first goal, excuse me. If you're setting goals for something, the first one's got to be first, because they come into conflict with each other inevitably. And we definitely want our Shabbos table to be a spiritual place, a place with his divrei Torah, a place with his miras, with his singing, a place where the family gets to spend time together, especially, in our technologically driven world. It's just so much more important that we have this time as a family. So all of these things together, but I really believe that the number one goal should be that this should be something that the children look forward to. And sometimes when we make that first goal, that it should be a place, let's say, for divrei Torah, for Torah thoughts to be said, or a place for zmiras, all wonderful things. But if that's going to supersede the fact that the children would look forward to this, I really think that creates a problem. And again, I really would like to take questions about this or any other subject. So that's just, out of the gate. I put up a short clip of an interview that I did with Rabbi Scott from a Khan from Eretz Yisrael. And this is a true story, by the way. I didn't make this up. I didn't just pull it out of my head. A woman actually called me and told me that her son sits in the bathroom for 45 minutes every Friday night during the meal, and how it aggravates her. And I innocently asked in a very soft voice, I said, is he allowed to be excused from the table to go sit on the couch? and read a book or just relax. He's been in school for 60 hours this week, right? It was an early teenager. So she said, what, in the middle of the table when everybody's there? So I said, he figured out the only place he could relax is the bathroom. So the idea of having this time, having enjoyable time, set it up the way it works for you. We when our children were small, my wife and I, we would put toys down next to especially in the wintertime, we would put toys down in the corner near the table, and we would eat with the children until the soup, and then we'd sing some zmiras, and then we would serve them the main dish, and then they would go play, and my wife and I sat and talked alone for an hour or two, which at the time with a few small children was Gan Eden, it was heaven. So, set the pattern that works for you. If you like having company, that's great. Don't expect the children to sit there. If they're not enjoying the conversation, they should be able to be excused from the table. If they're schmoozing with each other, that's great. Again, the way to do this and the best way to do this is to have age-appropriate goals and understanding of the nature of your children, how many children you have, the ranges of age. Rav Shlomo Wolbe Zatzal has a beautiful piece in his Sefer Zriu Binyan L'Chinuch, Planting and Building, about realistic expectations. And he actually mentions Shabbos tables, that parents who expect children to sit for very long times at Shabbos tables, at Shabbosos, it really can cause a tremendous amount of stress. So, again, some kids love to sing, some kids love to speak. If I turned it over to Q&A now and I forced each one of you to ask a question, I imagine that wouldn't be popular with all of you, right? So that's also part of the nature. Some of you will jump on the first opportunity, and I'll say in a moment that we're open to questions, and one of you will be excited about it, and 2 or 3 of you are just happy listening, or maybe we'll send in an email with the question. All of this is part of the nature. And that's the overall message. Make sure that it's time that the children really look forward to. And, one of the things that I often compare when parents talk about stress at Shabbos tables and the like, I ask them how they enjoy their Hanukkah meals together. And everybody usually has a great time there because the expectations that we have are lower. We don't expect the kids to sit quietly for long periods of time there. We expect them to just have fun with each other. The expectation level is very, very different. Now, I'm not suggesting that your Shabbos meals look exactly like that, but I do think that it's something that we ought to think about, especially with so many, Shabbos and Yom Tov meals coming up. And again, I look forward to your questions. Let's start right now. Let me just check if I think I allowed you to unmute yourselves. I did not. Now I am. So what I'd like to do is let's just leave it that whoever is speaking, unmute yourself. And when you're done, mute yourself afterwards. Go ahead, please. Anybody?
Yeah. Can I ask for the Shabbos table?
You can ask anything you want.
I'm sorry. At the Shabbos or Yom Tov table, what to do when the kids are a variety and have different needs, and what will keep some of them engaged will turn the other ones off.
Right. So what to do with that? So one of the things I did if you look on my social media, I've taken a list of what I'm going to post up afterwards. I'll send the video of my interview about Shabbos meals. If you do have social media, you can go to Yakov Horowitz and have a look on my discussion with him on Shabbos. And one of the things that I mentioned, who's speaking? Is this Ahuva?
No.
Okay. You don't need to mention your name. It's fine. So one of the things I told Rabbi Scott when we were discussing realistic expectations and challenges and working things, I said if you set aside the Shabbos meal thing, and you said, if I told you to go to take 2 kids out of high school, 1 kid out of middle school, 1 out of younger grades, and 1 out of preschool. if I just told you, just go randomly to a school, forget siblings. If you just went to any school, boys or girls, and you just took kids out of different grades, and just try to picture this, sit them down at a table and try to have a conversation with all of them. Just imagine you got a 17-year-old kid and you have a 4-year-old. So I assume that's what you're talking about, right?
Something like that. It's the youngest one in particular. The conversation is often very above her, and she's bored stiff, but the older kids are having a great time. And then when it's on her level, they have no patience for it.
Right. So maybe you might want to have a little chat with them, but this is Achayim. Our youngest was 8 years. You know, we have 4 children, between her and 6 years, and our youngest was born 8 years later, and she was exactly like that. In fact, eventually, she's 4. You said your youngest?
I'm sorry?
You said your youngest is 4?
No, she's older now, but yeah, a little
she's older now,
like middle school.
Okay, so it actually, she would wind up talking to the kids eventually about about who they're dating or anything. She was like having these conversations with the older 4, because that's the way she hung. In fact, my wife still talks about this. We were at some bris, I guess, as a family, and all 5, my wife and I and the 5 kids were there. The 4 of them were teenagers, and Sarah was, 3rd, 4th grade. And a waiter came around. We used to laugh about it. The waiter came around, offered coffee to everyone. And Sarah was insulted that she didn't ask. She says, "Hey, why don't you give me a coffee?" Like, she just thought that she was part of the gang. So, obviously, try to include that, try to talk to the kids. I'm sure you've done that already. It's challenging. It just is. I mean, think of it in a different setting. Imagine if you did this at a wedding and, you had people from different ages. So you can try to include them in conversations as best you can, or just try to make it work as best as you can. I'm sorry, I don't have a simple solution. We struggled with this as a family also. Okay. Anybody else, please? Sure. Anybody? By the way, that is a great part of the solution is understanding that this is normal, and you're going to wing it and do the best you can like everybody else does. I'm saying that's really part of that's what I'm trying to really, I think that's what Avalva speaks about most, is the expectation level. What typically happens is we get frustrated when we think about how we envision our Shabbos table. And most of us, if you went to Eretz Yisrael for a gap year, or you were in a house with a bunch of adults and everybody's singing Zmiris and exchanging Divrei Torah with people who have lots of patience, right? And are enjoying, all the people are enjoying this. And you say, oh, I can't wait till I have a Shabbos table and it's going to look just like this. And then life happens. So just to understand that that's not the average. The average isn't where kids sit for the long periods of time and take turns saying Divrei Torah and listen to each other respectfully. We wish it was like that. That's just not the way it is. So I'm saying, don't get frustrated, it's a normal thing to feel this way. I remember in shul, our 2 sons, there was a fellow who sat in front of me who had 3 boys, the age of our 2 boys. And I will never forget it. He used to come into shul, and it was a Hasidic shtibel. He would tell us, "That's the charub, sit down." And the kids would sit down, and they took a little book out of it, and they would literally sit there for an hour and a half reading books. And my kids, have my personality. So it is what it is. That's it. Just understand that that's what it is, and wing it as best as you can. Make sure that it's something that's enjoyable to them. That's my overall message. Anyone else, folks? I got some written questions, but please, anybody?
I have a different question, but on the same topic. So we also have a kid who's younger and teenagers, and the younger one is very perceptive and he loves to learn. So he'll often engage in the older level discussions. And last night we had parents' conferences, and the teacher told me he's saying like inappropriate things during Parsha, and I didn't really understand what she meant. And then she said, well, for example, he said Esav's head was in Marasa Machpelah. And I was like, but how's he supposed to know that's inappropriate? It's what he heard. Like,
right.
So how do you engage them? But
it's going to be like that. You're gonna have, that's a very mild, inappropriate thing, right?
Yeah, and I also felt it was unfair. The teacher just said it's inappropriate because it wasn't inappropriate. She just didn't want to teach it. But
right. Agreed. I'm saying, but you have to assume that if you have a young child living with older kids, there are going to be more inappropriate things than that, right? So
yeah,
it's a challenge. It's always been a challenge. Everybody who has kids of different ages deals with this. I saw such a beautiful Sfas Emes. I hope you all find it meaningful. It was so meaningful when I read it. Forgive me, it's just going to take a moment or two, but I think it brings out, I really believe that it brings out the theme that I'm trying to get across about being realistic and about understanding life. And Sfas Emes asks, the Sfas Emes was one of the Gerer Rebbes. One of the people in history that I would have loved to meet. He was an extraordinarily out-of-the-box thinker. And like every time you open up a Chumash and Rashi says something, you can always expect the Sfas Emes to just say something completely different out of, a totally different angle. And the Sfas Emes asks, it says as follows, it says, Bereshis bara Elokim es hashamayim v'sa'aretz. In the beginning, Hashem created heaven and earth. Bereshis, in the beginning, bara Hashem bara Bereshis bara Elokim shemayim v'aretz. Now, we know that Hashem has different names. We say different names for God in Chumash. The term Elokim is like a more din, judgment, or lack. Din is what we refer it to. It doesn't mean severe, but it just means like stray. And Rachamim, the term Hashem, we use for Rachamim, for mercy. There are other examples. There are other names. We have Shen Daled Yod, or we have different names that other names that Hashem uses. Those are the two most common ones. So the term Elokim, when you see Elokim, it usually means there's some sort of judgment or din or an accounting of sorts. And by Hashem is the name of mercy. So the Sfas Emes asks, Rashi quotes a medrash. It says it should have said Bereshis bara Hashem, right? A creation is an act of kindness. There's no din there, right? It says Bereshis, it should say Bereshis bara Hashem. So Rashi answers like this, that B'tchila olah b'machshava, Hashem originally thought that the world would be created with din. That's why it says Bereshis bara Elokim. So at the time of creation, it was only with din. And then later, Hashem saw that he created humans. Hashem in his infinite wisdom created humans. And he created us with the Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Hara, the inclination to do good and not so good. So Rashi says, according to Medrash, that Hashem saw that the world couldn't exist with just din. So therefore, Shatbo, Hashem made a partnership of din and Rachamim, and Hashem sort of switches between the two. Okay? So just again to review quickly Rashi, because you can appreciate how the Sfas Emes just, does another one of his classics and offers a fascinatingly different interpretation. So again, Bereshis bara Elokim, God created, the God of din. Rashi says, so why it should be bara Hashem? This was an act of mercy, of kindness, of benevolence. So Hashem says, Rashi says that Hashem originally thought that the world would always run with din, Bereshis bara Elokim, that it would operate with din. Hashem saw that the world couldn't exist because there were humans, so Hashem made a partnership. And the pasuk says later, B'yayim B'ray Hashem Elokim Eretz Hashemayim. You see the two names later in Bereshis together. So that's right. Ad Kan Rashi, that's what Rashi says. So the Sfas Emes says, like, what is this? He doesn't use these words, but in the vernacular, he would say Hashem changes his mind. Like, How exactly does that work? And what's this like? What does it mean exactly that that there was a change in something? And he says like he's searching. Some of us was searching for a deeper meaning. So he says something that I always find so meaningful whenever I think about it or learn it. And he says that when you're planning a bar mitzvah, or you're planning a new kitchen, or you're planning you're planning a weekend, you're planning Pesach. So you have a plan. You sit down and you try to work it out, and you say, we're going to serve these things on these days, or we're going to spend Chalamoid doing these couple of things with the kids. So you try to plan for things. Now, at the moment that you make that plan, it's not going to be the way you think it's going to be. If I ask you, do you really expect you have all these meals laid up, laid out for Yom Tov and what you're serving, and do you expect it to go exactly like this? You say, well, I'll probably wing it. So more people will come, less people will come. Some of the food might get spoiled. So you wind up changing it. But imagine what it would look like if you had no plan. Imagine what it would look like if you started a kitchen with no plan. So you plan for perfection and you adjust to reality. So he says Hashem didn't change his mind. Again, a different interpretation from Rashi. He says Hashem didn't change his mind. What happened was that Hashem planned for perfection. Hashem had an image in his mind of what he wanted humans to look like. A human who serves HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who's spiritual and kind and compassionate. And that was the plan. And Hashem knew that he's creating humans. It's not going to look like this. So Bereshis Bara, the Bria, when he created it, it was perfection. But knowing all along that he would have to change later. And I think that's really the when we talk about our Shabbos meals and we talk about our plans for Chagim, for Yom Tov, I think it's such an important thing to keep in mind. You have a plan for how you'd like it to look. I want my table, Shabbos table to be places, with his miros and his Divrei Torah, and the children can all have one conversation, right? And my kids won't pick up something that the teacher's going to say is inappropriate from the older kids. But that this is, all along that it's not going to. So when we make adjustments, here's my takeaway from the Sasanas. When we make adjustments for the inevitable, we shouldn't be frustrated that we're not achieving perfection, because this world is not about perfection. Hashem, imagine what it says, look at Noach, it says that Hashem felt bad that he created people. What does that mean? So all of this, the people were sinning and he had to destroy the world. This concept of having an idea of what you want your Shabbos table to look like, and then adjust to the realities that your kids are restless, so you have other people there, or you have children of different ages. So you don't do the Parsha questions at the table. You do the Parsha questions on the couch. You could, you split up, you take a rotation around certain things. Always be able to adjust, keeping that goal in mind. That's why I said the goal in mind, I think, is that you should want the children to be there. This is something that they should look forward to. And Dr. Twersky, Oliver Shalom, Rav Shia Twersky once told me, we were having a discussion about children abandoning religion, and he said that if we all kept Shabbos the way it should be kept, and he did not mean the ritual observances, the mitzvahs, this, he meant globally. If he said, if I, Dr. Twersky is thinking himself, he says, if I exhibited everything I should exhibit on Shabbos, people in the street would run after me and say, I want some of that, because they would they would see the light in my face as I'm enjoying it. So that's what I think the goal should be. It should be something that the children should look forward to. And I believe that if we replace that goal with other valuable goals first, and we crowd that out, I think there's a price to pay for it. I hope I answered your question. Anyone else, folks, please unmute yourself and ask away, or I'll go ahead.
Sure. So first of all, I want to thank Rabbi Horowitz, because I very much appreciate what Rabbi Horowitz is saying about kind of like, that we all have the ideal that we want to have. And then there's the reality of the beautiful family that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us that is just not exactly the ideal that we had when we were getting married. And the practical imperfections that I am as a person and that my children are and all that stuff. And I very much appreciate the energy and the perspective that Rabbi Horowitz is giving, because I think a lot of, and sort of telling us to get rid of that frustration, because I think a lot of people spend a lot of time in beating ourselves up or looking at the neighbors or all these things that just don't help us to be better parents. And so I appreciate having this space and I appreciate having this forum about it. If I can just shift back to something that Rabbi Horowitz spoke about a different time, and because that's really more where I want to just ask the question. When Rabbi Horowitz talked a lot about parenting to have an open home, so that your children will want to be open and talk to you. So again, I guess there's a similar theme in terms of the way that we want things to be and then the reality of where things are. And how do we find that balance between, like, if there are things that our kids are going to do that we don't necessarily agree with, and so how do we sort of like stand up for what we believe in, but also make them want to talk to us?
So that's so spot on. What you're saying is so spot on, because that really encapsulates everything we're talking about. What you're mentioning is, one of the things we mentioned in a previous class was about the notion of having your children confide in you and seek your guidance, and that the prerequisite for that is that to remove the barriers of why children won't want to do it. Now, what happens when they do tell you? You're going to find out things that you're not happy with. Then what? Is that what you're saying, right? Is that correct? Right. So that's also this process of exactly what the Sfas Emes was speaking about. That's why I find it so meaningful, because this is my day job. This is what I go around spending my life trying to encourage parents and children to look at themselves like this. What do you think it's like for a kid who's struggling in school to watch everybody else, ace tests and they just, so it's all of it. So what you said is correct. When your children tell you things that that disappoint you and upset you, and in your heart that it's the right thing to do because you want them to have that relationship with you, that means you're going to listen to things that won't work for you, but you'll know that your child has such a gift that they could talk to you about this, and that's worth everything. So that's the trade-off. I always say that parents whose children don't talk to them sleep a lot better, right? Sometimes, right? But they usually it evens out somewhere, so you keep doing what you're doing. If you believe in your heart that this is the right thing to do, and you believe in your heart that that you shouldn't have a rigid Shabbos table, but rather an enjoyable one, by definition, that's going to be looser, and it's not going to look as nice, or whatever that means. It's not going to be as organized as some homes in your neighborhood that you probably shouldn't go visit because it gets you frustrated. But it's in nature. True story. I practiced my bar mitzvah pshetel, my dvar Torah at my bar mitzvah. I have Baruch Hashem. My parents both were passed away over the past 10 years. I have Baruch Hashem 4 siblings who are alive. You can ask any one of them. I practiced my pshetel walking around, spinning a basketball around the house. I kid you not. I turned a basketball. I walked around the house, or Gemara says in Brachos, whatever. And my grandmother, my mother used to say, "What's it that team? What's he going to do with the bar mitzvah without a basketball?" That was the joke at home. I'm a restless guy. If I sit too long, my mind starts wandering. That worked for me. Most people would go, it would drive them crazy. That works for me. So you could imagine sitting in school was not that easy. So just, I think the most important thing is to be happy with your children the way they are. To be happy with them. I'm gonna we have everybody's here is on an email list. I'm going to send you. I'm going to send you a Dvar Torah that I said about Chamol al Masecha. I get emotional when I speak about it, so I'm not going to do it now. I'll send you the video. But I have my own thought. Why is it that we say Chamol al Masecha in Yom Kippur Davening, Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, right after Kedusha of Musaf? It's a beautiful song. We sing it, right? Chamol Masecha, have pity on us, your creations, Hashem. V'sismach b'masecha, and be happy with us. So, I think to myself, like, wow, that's a stretch. Chemla means I'm not worthy of redemption, and forgive me, and now I want you to be happy with me. So I have a thought on that, and it basically circles around the notion that we do our best when people, our loved ones, are happy with us just the way we are. That's the opportunity, that's the springboard that allows us to go forward. I told the story of a young man who I'll reference it, I'll give you a timeline where it was. I told the story of someone, whatever, whose wife didn't look down on him, and he ultimately got divorced because he said he can't live like this. And everything she wants, she was bugging him about, not bugging, she was asking him to change. He wound up doing as soon as he married someone who accepted him. So that's the idea. The idea is your children, everybody's flawed. We want Hashem to be happy with us. We want, that's what's that, that's the Masismach Masach. Before we do tshuva, not by Nila. I want to get, I'm going to lose it. That's the thought. Our children aren't perfect. We're not perfect. To be happy with where they are, understanding that they need to improve certain things. And it doesn't mean that we're okay with everything they're doing. That's not what it means. Quite to the contrary, we understand that it's a journey, but to be happy with them and enjoy your Shabbos meal. In other words, my message to you and all of us is don't sit there, dripping acid at the Shabbos table because it's not what you want. You're going to wind up getting stressed. Enjoy your family, Baruch Hashem. That's all.
I very much appreciate what Rabbi Horowitz says, and I think that it's so important that you're giving us sort of permission to be happy with our kids as imperfect as they are, and be happy with ourselves imperfect as we are. And the question I have from that is that, I think that a lot of people are like, but I have to be mechanech. And so can you speak a little bit to where the balance of what actually is chinuch and what isn't chinuch, and where is that balance of being mechanech with being happy with who they are?
So that's fantastic. Fantastic question. And in fact,
can I add to that question? If they do confide in you and they ask for your opinion, and your opinion is contrary to what they're doing, how do you express that to them?
That's fantastic. It's very, very well said. I'll tell you what, I'll take yours first. Okay, put that on hold for a moment. So just want to repeat it. I want to just tease out exactly what you're saying. You're
sorry.
No.
I thought it was just an addition to that question. Sorry.
It isn't, no, but it's a little bit it's similar, but you're bringing out a different point. Can you just repeat it again? So I want to hear it a second time.
Yeah, sure. If a kid does confide in you and asks for your opinion, and they want you to tell them it's okay, but it's contrary to your beliefs, how do you convey that message to them without them feeling like they can't confide in you?
So it's my experience that when children talk things over with you, they don't necessarily this should be a disclaimer, this should be like one of these disclaimers. Mom, I'm going to have this discussion, but I don't have to listen to you. Okay, that's really okay. I want to talk to you about this, but I'm not obligated to listen. That's really what they're thinking. And let me give you a simple example. You have an 11th grade son, and your son is vaping, or his friends are vaping, and he's telling you, his friends say, and he says that vaping is much better than cigarettes. It's cleaner. There's less this. There's less. there's less chemicals, and I can stop whenever I want to. And he or she would like to discuss it with you. I think that all kids, virtually all kids, would love to discuss everything with their parents. They just don't want a speech. They don't want you to look at them, a certain way. So the child comes to you and says, tell me, what's your opinion on this? What do you think, Mom? What do you think, Dad? Some of my friends are saying this, some of my friends are saying that. Now, let's say they're not ready to give them. Maybe they just want to hear what the other side is. Why shouldn't I do this? What's the reason? So they just want to discuss it with you. Now, they know, they're pretty good at knowing what your standards and what your values are. They're just not ready to listen right now, or they feel that they're kids now, and now is their time to have some fun, and now is their time to explore things. We don't like it, but again, what I'm suggesting is when they ask you about something, why can't I text on Shabbos? That's a big one. That is a very, very big one. And lots of kids are keeping their phones in their room and using them because they're not comfortable having a conversation with an adult they respect about why they can't, and what's exactly wrong with that. I heard that it's not really a malacha. It's like, you open the fridge and the motor goes on later, and it's a drama, whatever. They just want to discuss things with you. So the best thing they could have is to get your advice, your thoughts on it. And then they go through this process. Sometimes they'll listen and they'll say thank you. And sometimes they'll have to find it out for themselves. But you're having a conversation with them. And what the Sfas Emes says, that your goal, what you're thinking about, right? That machshava that we talked about, that the Sfas Emes said, the plan that you have for your child at that given time, that's still the plan. That's what your plan is. But your child is a child. So it's not necessarily a conflict. You're not lowering your standards. It's not your standards. It's them and their children. Remind me, I'll send you something about adolescent development. One of the things that I'll send you something about developmental. The children, we know from research that their frontal lobes until their 20s, this age of adolescence, their frontal lobe, which is the executive function, which is like the brakes on their decision making, is not fully formed. So I think that's why, that's adolescence. Adolescence, I believe, is the time that they should live in our homes so that we can help guide them through their mistakes and to grow from them. So it's not that you're lowering your standards because your kid is talking about vaping, even though you're passionately opposed to it. You're having a conversation. It doesn't mean they're going to listen all the time.
Can I ask you a question, Rabbi?
Please. I just want, young lady, did I answer your question? I'm sorry.
Yes, I think so. Thank you.
Okay, the other woman, I don't see names here. I'm sorry. Yonina.
So, yeah.
Did I
so
answer
just
her? Thank you.
Not 100%, because meaning my question really was, and I think that hers is a practical example of one situation, but I'm kind of going more to the core of the question of when we parent, and I appreciate that Rabbi Horowitz is giving us permission to, kind of be happy with where our children are, but also we feel an obligation to be mechanech them. And I think that that's an example of sort of where maybe in that moment you're making a decision to maybe express your thing. And I guess what I heard in your answer was with a state of neutrality, like this is my opinion, but I kind of come in not forcing, but understanding that you're still going to make choices whether I agree with them or don't agree with them. And I think that,
So Nina, that's really, it's the age that they're up to. There are so many variables here. So it's age, it's their inclination. It's, are they going to do what happens if you say no? Okay. So, when parents call me, should I send my kids want to go out, let's say Shabbos, excuse me, they said they want to go bowling. I don't really like the bowling alley. It gets a little wild. It's whatever. They go just hanging out. I don't like the places they're going to. What should I do? So I said, you didn't finish I only heard one side. If I say no, then what? Are they going to ignore me and walk right out? Are they going to fight about everything else for the next week because this is very important to them? So this, for example, and maybe I wasn't clear about that, and I because I find myself encouraging parents to think of it this way, sometimes I don't say the obvious, which is, of course, you should set rules in your house, and you should, at a certain age, you tell, because I'm sorry, you're not vaping. But that's, how old are they? An 11th grader that's going to go do it behind your back anyway. What have you accomplished? So it's all of these factors. Same thing with technology. My overall philosophy is they should do it by the time they're ready to do it behind your back. They should do it in front of you with supervision. So he's saying, no, but it's my values. I don't think kids should have phones until they're 16. How about the rest of the class? How old are they? Again, what's their nature? So again, what I was saying is, when a child is discussing, let's say, drinking or vaping or many other things that they're grappling with, texting on Shabbos, we were talking. So again, you're not going to have the same answer for a 13-year-old or a 16-year-old or a kid who has a compliant personality, or a kid like me. So all of these things factor in. I think the importance is knowing where they're up to, so that, and you can't really know that if you don't have a relationship with them. That's the point. See, thank you. You helped me bring it out. You helped me think it through. The beauty, the nicest thing is, and it works best when you know where your child is up to. So when they say, what do you think about vaping? You're thinking to yourself, are you kidding? I saw 4 packs of the stuff in your room already, right? So you know where they're up to. One more Torah source, if I may. Rav Dessler Zatzal has he does not write it in this context, but I think I encourage you to think about it as parents, all of you, in so many different ways. Rav Dessler's concept, he talks about Nukudas HaBechira. Nukuda is a point. You familiar with the term?
Yeah.
Okay. So Nukudas HaBechira, Nukuda is a point, Bechira is choice. And the question that he discusses, and other, Sifrei Machshava, many of our Gedolim and philosophers talked about this in global terms. In other words, Hashem, we know that we have mitzvahs and averos. We get rewards for doing good things. We get punished for doing things that aren't right. Is that for every mitzvah? In other words, it's a sin that I'm not supposed to murder somebody. So do I get credit for not killing someone today? That's what Rav Dessler is discussing, okay? Or let's say, if I say 2 words of Lashon Hara, is it all over for me? But that's something that's so hard for me to go through a whole day without. So Rav Dessler says, in other words, the concept in machshava, in thought and philosophy, is that perhaps we only really get schar va'onish for that little box that's within our range. That's how, think of it as a battlefield. And where's the battle taking place? Okay, it's a soccer game. That's why I have to talk about war. Okay, playing a soccer game, there's a huge field. Where's the ball? Where are they tussling around? Where's that little? So that space is where our schar va'onish, because there are things that we're never going to do wrong, that we won't do, and maybe we shouldn't be rewarded, and there are some things that are above. It says in Shulchan Aruch that I'm supposed to get up at Chatzos and pray for the rebuilding of the Beis Hamikdash. Supposed to get up in the middle of the night. This is Shulchan Aruch, right? It's almost Chatzos now, right? So do I get punished for not doing? That's Rav Dessler speaking. A long thought to come up with this point. The biggest blessing a child can, one of the greatest blessings a child could have is a parent who knows where their nekudas habechira is. And once you know that, all these things become so obvious almost. All the questions that you have, and you're debating, or should I say this? Should I do this? Should I make a fuss over this? If you know the nekudas habechira, you got it. You know that this is, beyond their limits. Don't talk about this. It's like, not only that, it's a waste of your effort. You're losing political capital and you're frustrating them. They wind up looking at themselves like they're horrible. Imagine if I went to my Rabbi and my Rabbi would speak to me for a half hour that I should get up chatzos. Yankee, it says in Shulchan Aruch, how come you're not doing it? Right? Like, I'll shake my head, I'll be polite, but like, do you know who I am? Like, it's not me. So, in other words, it's so destructive when you get into places that are not in their space. It's like you're hanging up a sign, I don't know who you are. So when you know your child nekudas habechira, then you can talk to them in a way that's helpful to them and meaningful and understanding their struggle. David, you're next. One last thought, and
I just want to make sure that I heard it before you go on to David. Then if that's okay. Did you want to add a thought first?
No. Go ahead.
No, I just want to really clarify for myself what is chinuch and what is not chinuch. And so what I think I'm hearing Rabbi Horowitz saying is that chinuch starts with a place of accepting and being happy with the child where he is, and working on developing that relationship with the child in the best degree so I can know who that child really is and where his nekudas habechira is, and then do my best to guide that child. And I think it takes a lot of faith in myself and a lot of faith in my child, because I can't worry about every little detail. I have to sort of live with more emunah that he's going to kind of go through it, and just like I do step by step, and I'm not going to get him there today, but this is where his nekudas habechira I find out, or a certain situation or a trauma or whatever that the child has been through, puts the child in a situation that, again, is like this vasemes. It's way more than wasn't what I planned. And so my being mechanech means, number one, being happy with the child. Number two, developing a relationship so I can understand the nekudas habechira. And then once I have that, using that to try to guide the child to something that he's going to be most successful in taking that next step.
Right. And that work in progress, is what we are also, right? We're struggling to become better parents. That means that's why you're staying up at night the week before Pesach at 10 o'clock at night when you're supposed to be getting up for chatzos. No, because you want to become better. That's what it's like. And I think it's very refreshing for children to hear parents talk about their struggles. And that's why the Torah wrote about the struggles of our greatest leaders. So all of this ties together. Last thing, this from Dr. Twersky. Another thing, I saw it in a book that he wrote eventually, but he told me in person once in the context of a conversation. And I think it does speak to nekudas habechira. His father admonished him for playing chess on Rosh Hashanah in the afternoon. You heard the story? Are you nodding your head?
Patsnisht.
I'm from Milwaukee, so yeah.
There you go. So his father admonished him for playing chess. It says in the Shulchan Aruch that after davening, after you eat the meal, you should go back to shul and daven, or not go to sleep. So he's playing chess. So he was a master chess player, Dr. Twersky was. So his father says, chess on Rosh Hashanah? And then he stopped for a second, and he gave him a little devilish look, and he says, no, did you win? Okay. So his sons, there are lots of kids that you wouldn't talk to about, say, oh, thank God they're playing chess, right? I would say the majority of kids, his father knew his nekudas habechira. He knew that that's where he was, and he did it, and he appreciated the fact that he's a good player. So like all of that is rolled up into one. Now imagine if we went to one of our kids and we told them, hey, you play chess on Rosh Hashanah? He said, Dad, you kidding? Okay, so that's all part of it. David, I'm sorry I kept you waiting. Go.
No, it's all right. It's fascinating conversation. I enjoyed being reminded of the Bechira point. I had learned that many years ago.
Of the what? I'm sorry, the
Bechira point. I had read that. It was Geschmack. I enjoyed indulging in that again. So Baruch Hashem, I'm not dealing with the vaping or the texting or these serious issues, just normal chinuch. And obviously, when you hear everybody's a smart quarterback on Monday, the loving approach is always a great way. We got that, but we learn that Hashem treats us also with fear. If you're only going to have a relationship out of love with Hashem, it's not going to work. It's a very nice idea, but it's not going to work, right? We know that. We don't have to talk about that. So now how it translates to parenting. So being nice all the time is very godly, very loving, very beautiful. But when you see the child leave the bicycle out again and leave the wood standing up with the nails up again, that's very dangerous. And you're always very sweet and you're always very nice. And, everything just continues and you feel this 18-year-old is a grown-up and they should know these things. How do you show strength? Or you never show strength? You're forgiving and loving for everything?
Now, thank you, David. Thank you for asking that. Thank you. So if you go back to the Sfas Emes, it didn't say that Hashem doesn't do Elokim at all, right? It says that there was a partnership, that Hashem realized that he's dealing with humans. So it's some of this and some of that. So that's what we should do as parents. It doesn't mean that you should, if a child leaves a bicycle out, it doesn't mean you should say, "Oh, honey, that's so sweet. I love the way you left it parked just where the rain." But you don't have to. I don't believe in. The research shows, by the way, that over complimenting is a lot of people get insulted actually by it.
Tachlis. What do I say? What do I actually say? The thing is going to get stolen, and it's not the first time, and I'm getting angry, and it's not a good midah.
So what you do is, I just spoke about this last week. If you have access, I think I posted it online. We had a whole discussion about consequences versus punishments. So punishment is like an irrational. You left your bicycle out, go up to your bed, right? You're punished. You can't come on a Chalamite trip, like nothing to do with it, right? So say, okay, I'm going to take your bicycle for 2 days, let's say, or if there's a repair, you're going to have to work for and pay for whatever it was. So there definitely should be consequences. They should be done with they should be done with a sense of yashrus, of fairness. It should be done without anger, if at all possible. And in a way where people, what?
Even at 8, the girl's 18 years old. She used my bicycle. She left it out. It's very upsetting because it really could get stolen. And I feel like I'm being too nice.
So sit down and have a chat. So saying, you're using my bicycle. I'm suspending that privilege for a week. Nothing wrong. No, nobody's going to collapse from that. I promise you. So, I think that's why so that's what I meant, an outcome, a consequence versus a punishment. So punishment is irrational. You say, I'm taking away the car keys because, you can't drive for a week because you left the bicycle out a year. So if you say, look, I let you use my bicycle, I saved up for this. It costs a lot of money and I like it. I use it. I enjoy it. I'm going to have to take away the privilege if you're not going to be responsible for it.
And she drives the car too fast also. I don't know how to tell her. We don't know how to stop her.
Speak up. Take the keys away. I'm saying, like, with one of our kids, we have excuse me, on our corner, there's a catch basin, for the water to come off the street. So it has a little sharp edge. So one of our children was fond of cutting the corner and slashing the tire, and shredding the tire so the first time I expressed displeasure because it was irresponsible. The second time he had to pay for half the tire before he could drive again. So, you try to reward good behavior. You try to offer a consequence. Again, that's logical and tied to it. So I was once giving a parenting class and a woman raised her hand and says, all you talk about is being nice. How come you never say, what?
Yeah, that's exactly the question.
But that's what she said. She said it just like that. She says, all you talk about is, being loving and kind and this and that. You apply it, you didn't say, but that's what you meant. But so I'll tell you, it was fascinating because I responded that usually we look for the Shvil Hazav, for the golden path of moderation. So I should speak 50-50, right? I should talk about, and I hadn't thought of it until that moment. That's what questions are great, because it helps you sharpen what's going. And I said, you know what I'm thinking? As I'm thinking, the reason I did it is probably because 95% of the people, of the kids who come to me for stuff, it's because the parents are too harsh.
Yeah.
5% is because the parents are too lenient. But you should still do 50-50. But it's my nature to glide towards the harder part to do, right? It's easier to.
You're in the complaint department for serious violations, and the parents are going to really lose it.
So that's part of the balance. Yep. I hope I answered your question, David. It's great to see you.
Yeah, thank you. I just stumbled upon you speaking on LinkedIn, and I hit the thing, and I ended up here.
I'm delighted that I send out follow-up emails with some readings and some stuff to look at and think about. We have another one next week on Monday night. Folks, anybody else?
Hi, I have a question.
Please.
Towards the Shabbos table and to the issue of balancing the chinuch with having the children have it enjoyable. So if the children, want to have a book at the table, and I don't think that's appropriate, or they don't want to bench or come to the table for benching, and I think they should. What I try to do is just tell them that I don't think they should, but I don't make them take the book away, or I don't make them bench or come to the table for benching. And I just wanted to get your thought if that you think is a successful approach, or am I letting them off too easy, or what do you think about that approach?
Okay, thank you for asking. It's a great question. So I think that
I second the question.
Okay, thank you. So now we have a quorum. So I think Rav Dessler would say, "Where's the Nakudas HaBechira?" Right? If you make a big fuss over them, not coming, are they benching where they are, or they're not benching at all? Moshe, when you said that,
yeah, it depends on the child. Some don't want to bench at all, and some
right.
will.
So you try to construct things. Look, I don't think that you should close an eye to everything. I think it's best if you set things up where you try to create a circumstance that it's easy for them to do the thing that's most important to you. So let's say you feel that for the long-term chinuch, benching is not something that's negotiable. That's something that we should do. Okay. So then work around that. In other words, if you say, look, regardless of, you're reading, you're not reading, you're going off the table, you're not, it takes just a couple of minutes to bench, whatever that is, I want you back at the table. Usually, the thing that you really want, I believe that you'll get them to do, and you don't have to be harsh about it. It's how you articulate what you really want. So let's say, for example, of all the components of a Shabbos table, of let's say singing zmiros and helping in the kitchen, helping the family with the chores, and being polite and listening to others, and all of it, everything that you would want the kids to do at the table, figure out what's most important to you. Let's say it's benching, then you talk about that first. Then you say, look, I understand if you're restless, and you can't sit and you want to read a little bit, that's fine. You could tell them if you want to, you could say as a family, if you want to read, do it on the couch. It's okay if you ask to be excused. But you know what, when we start that first zmiros, I want everybody at the table. Let's say you have an argument. Let's say you say that there's one zmira that we all sing together, and after that you can leave afterwards and stay as long as you want, sing or don't sing, So if the benching is important, I would say probably that would be a big one. I would put it high up there. So let's say you say, look, we'll work around some of these other things, but look, benching, I want everybody back here for.
Rabbi, the key might be not to discuss it at the time and discuss it another time, no?
That would be fine, right? If you say
I think that would be the key, no? Because if you do it when it happens, right, you're asking for a fight, right?
Right. Well, you didn't say that yet. You're supposed to. No, did you articulate what the value is? I tell parents when I give workshops on selecting a high school. So I always tell the parents to sit down with the principal and ask them what their ideal, what their machshava, what do they see in their students? What are they looking for? What are their goals for their students? And I said, listen for the very first thing that person, that he or she says, because that's what they really want. I wouldn't say it's foolproof, but
I wasn't following. Could you?
I tell parents, I think that selecting the right school for a child is an art and a science. It's a lot of thought should go into it. Not what you want, what's right for them. So many different factors. But one of the things that I tell people to help them get in sync with what they're looking for is to find out what is the core value of the head of school. And let's say a boys' high school, it's perfectly legitimate. It's not my business. It's their school. But some people will tell you that we want strong b'nei Torah who are Talmidei Chachamim and mention, right? And one, so they'll say 3 goals. What they said in order is usually the first thing is what they really want, and everything else, is either. I found that to be a very helpful exercise in listening to people what they're saying, because that's usually because they bump into each other. Those values bump into each other. So if I want a certain surah, a look for the yeshiva, and a kid comes to school without a hat and jacket, and he's davening, if the yeshiva has a hat and jacket, if I'm worried about midos, then I won't tell him to go upstairs and call his mother and have her bring the hat and jacket. Or I'll speak to him after davening, or we'll do it in a way that's not in public. If I want the culture of the school to be a certain way, then that's what I'll do first. All the values bump into each other. That was a question. I think it's Moshe. I'm going to stop after this question, but what I'm saying is, I think you should decide, your spouse, sit down and say, what's our values? What do we want most out of this package? What's the long term? What's temporary and what's long term? What are the things that we really want to stress? Let's say it's benching. Then articulate that to the kids. Say, look, one thing we do, we thank Hashem for the blessing that He gave us for the food, and I need everybody at the table. I could almost guarantee you, if that's the biggest thing you ask for, you'll get it. And then the kids will walk up, and then you let them read a book at the table. That's up to you. Again, it's up to you. If you want to
choose your priorities.
I'm sorry?
Choose your priorities and make them very clear.
And that's it, both. And not only that, come to the realization that you're not going to get 6 priorities. Maybe you will, but in all likelihood you won't. But I think it was Moshe, what you were saying about this, the whole notion of thinking about, benching and sitting at the table and singing Zmiris and making sure your little sister doesn't feel left out. And by the way, your little sister not being left out, you could make that number 1. You say, look, sweetheart, every child in this house should feel comfortable and happy, and we don't want to exclude it. If that's number 1 to you, it'll come across that way. Okay, I just want to check some questions. If one kid's
Thank you, Rabbi.
You don't tell the kids. Okay, great, folks. So that's a good question. What do you do if one kid's Nekudas HaBechira isn't to bench? Well, someone texted this in, okay? And the other kids ask why they don't have to bench, and they do. That is a discussion. So I'm gonna push that to next week, Emir Hashem, and I'll take that under advisement. That's a broader discussion about what to do when you're making allowances and bending the thumb back because a particular child needs it, how does that affect the rest of your family? What do you tell the other children? And the whole, that's not a 2-minute thing. Folks, I really hope you found this helpful. I hope you enjoyed it.
Found it very helpful.
Check your email. Great. Check your emails, folks. I'll send you some follow-up information. And I look forward to seeing you next week, 9 o'clock in Mirz Hashem on Monday. Okay, guys, have a wonderful week, everybody. Hatzlacha. Be well.
Shkoach. Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach.
Thank you.
My greatest pleasure. Be well, everyone.